How does a teenage boy make sense of the world when it seems like his community has let him down? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. And today I have a bit of an interesting story for you, especially one with an interesting title. Today I wanted to talk, it's Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about an interesting short story. And it is about football and absentee fathers. I am referring to Trample the Dead, Hurdle the Weak by Jim Shepard, which was published in 2007 in his short story collection, Like You'd Understand Anyway, which has an interesting title, but also you can see two men wrestling. One person doesn't appear to have a head, but I can't tell if that's like either a shared sort of head thing or like this guy's head is kind of hidden behind somewhere. I don't really know for sure. For those who don't know, Jim Shepard is a white American author who has been writing since the 1980s. He's written short stories as well as longer form novels to mixed success, I would say. This is the first time I've encountered his work here before. But it is pretty interesting, and I'd like to check out some more down the road if I can find it. I actually checked this out from my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They might have interesting reads there. But a lot of people have said that Jim Shepard's work focuses on people in crisis, people at important stages in their life. This collection seems to be focusing a lot on mental health. Especially by those who should be taken care of by elders, but they're not able to help them for whatever reason. It's pretty interesting writing. Jim Shepard, or Jim's wife, is also a writer, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much all I know. I will say I enjoyed this, and I'll tell you why in the analysis section. But without further ado, let's talk about Trample the Dead, Hurdle the Weak. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Trample the Dead, Hurdle the Weak focuses on a teenage boy named Paducah. That's not his actual name. That's the name that his coach gives him because the coach just calls all the teenagers, all the boys in high school, what their city or regional name is. And Paducah is a high school football player. He played Pop Warner when he was younger, which is sort of like Pee Wee football. And he's living in Texas, where football is a pretty big deal, especially high school football. And he's very dedicated and is working at being part of the defensive line. And at the start of the story, we see that he is focusing on his deadbeat father, wondering where he is, not really getting any information from his mother, kind of fighting with his brother about that. And he's obsessing over another football player named Corey from a distant school who looks kind of like him, and he's sure that Corey's father is actually his father, and he started a new family. He doesn't have any proof of that, but he's determined to face off against Corey, which requires getting to the regional championships in order to be able to play in a football game against him. And he recalls his football journey in Texas, being in Pop Warner, and then slowly making his way from the JV to varsity, becoming a pretty well-regarded defensive end, and making friends with someone named Wainwright, who is also pretty good, but more focused and more aggressive. It seems like like the narrator, Paducah, doesn't really believe that Wainwright is playing football for the right reasons and is just working out whatever frustrations that he might have. It should also be noted that his brother has a lack of success, and his brother even jokes about his focus on Corey, noting like, oh, Corey's a good running back because his father actually loves him. Just noting the absurdity of the situation that Paducah finds himself in. as time goes on, Paducah begins acquiring more injuries while playing, particularly hurting his ACL, but the coaches encouraging them to play through it. The coaches aren't really on their side. And they even seem to write on the board, trample the dead, hurdle the weak. Don't focus on people who get injured. Wait until the play is over and then help them. Like, no one seems to be questioning why you're telling a bunch of teenagers that. And again, nobody's ever bothering to question why Paducah wants to play against Corey. They're just encouraging his behavior of getting to the big game by any means possible. There is a sort of homecoming game that is coming up in the story against a school named Childress, which is a bit of a rival school. The opposing coaches have a bet that goes on, and Paducah believes that winning in this current season where they're undefeated will help him get to that big game that he wants. But during that game, he ends up breaking his ribs, and it seems like Wainwright even tramples him at that point, or like participates in him getting injured in some way as a means of sending a message about not focusing on the game at hand. But he notes that he's not going to just sit by and let the injury take him. He's going to continue to play. And as the story comes to a close, he seems like he says that the only thing that's going to stop him from facing off against Corey later is like just straight up dying. And his hopes, as he notes, are that he wants Corey's father to see him like tackle Corey, presumably, and say, "Oh, look at that kid. He is a terror on the field." And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is a fair bit to talk about with Trample the Dead, Hurdle the Weak. One of the ideas that Shepard is talking about here is that of the missing piece. Paducah yearns for a relationship with his missing father, or his absentee father. He doesn't quite know who his father is or where he's gone, and his mother isn't really providing him with a lot of information about that. She might know who he is, or it might have just been like a one-night stand, or he might not have really revealed too much about him, or he might have just been a bad person and she's trying to protect the kids. It's a bit unclear there. But what is clear is that Paducah's focus on this is distracting him from his responsibilities, like school, like time with family, but especially, or as the coaches would say, more importantly, it's distracting him from football. His head's not in the game. It's leading to other teams scoring on him. It's leading to a disconnect between him and Wainwright. And it's also affecting his mental health. He's kind of out of it, and he's going through what appears to be depression, maybe a little bit of anxiety. He's kind of not really sure what his place is in life, as a lot of teenagers would. And normally, like a teacher or someone would step in and say, "Hey, you're experiencing these feelings. This is normal. Maybe go see a therapist, because that could be beneficial." But no one's really stepping in, which is something I'll talk about in a few moments. But Corey in this story seems to represent what Paducah can't have, and that is a loving father and a better, at least what appears to be a better emotional state. It's entirely possible that Corey is going through the same doubts and same frustrations, or at least similar frustrations to what Paducah is dealing with. And it should be noted that, there's no proof that, Corey is related to Paducah, that Corey's father is Paducah's absentee father. But Paducah is hyper-focusing on it, and it doesn't matter. He's got it in his head that, this is what is the case. And if he beats Corey in a football game, that means that he's achieved something. That means that he maybe his father will come back into his life. Kind of delusional in a little bit of a way. And that's what leads to his brother's joke that I mentioned earlier, where his brother says, "Oh, what makes Corey a good running back is that his father is in his life," which is absolutely not true. It's just he's pointing out the absurdity of wanting to beat Corey for that reason, and assuming that whether or not Corey has a father in his life is the wrong question, or the wrong thing to focus on. And his mother does try to fill in, which is very interesting. Trying to be there for him, but she has other jobs, other stuff. It's very difficult to be a single mother, so she's trying to do her best. And it's very interesting. Like, this is something that a lot of young people experience. But Jim Shepard is talking about it through the lens of football, of wanting to achieve something for the sake of being noticed by a father that might or might not be there. I like how he's capturing that sort of empty kind of feeling, that hopelessness that a teenager might experience. He does a particularly good job at it. Shepard is also talking about being let down by your community, or what I call authority failure. Shepard highlights how the adults in Paducah's life have failed him, but have also failed the other youths around him. There's an interesting quote from this that I would like to read to you. Guys are waiting on the other side of the line like horses at a starting gate with a baby in the middle of the track. All over Texas, kids are getting ready to cripple and be crippled. And parents are doing their bit or drowning a drink or missing out entirely because they got things to do too. And that's a really interesting quote because it highlights how the children are being let down by the adults. You forget that these teenage boys who are playing football are teenage boys, that they're still technically children, and parents and community members have a duty to help raise them, to show them the right path and provide help when they seem to be struggling. And that is absolutely not happening here. They're praising violence in football. As I noted before, like one of the coaches writes, "Trample the dead, hurdle the weak on the board," which is not a message that you should be sending to children or people at a very stressful point in their life. No one seems to want to help the injured, and there's a sense that like it's okay to yell at these children. And what's more is they're also practicing in the summer heat in this story as a way to intimidate their rivals. But that doesn't really seem to do much to the rivals, and in fact it gives heat stroke. Like some of the other young football players are vomiting, and it's seen as a sign of weakness for them to vomit. It's not seen as like a failure on the coach's part to more effectively lead their team through more reasonable manners. It's just if you're not capable of keeping up, you're not meant for the team, and goodbye. And that's not healthy. That's not a great way of thinking things. And for Paducah to be going through these mental health kind of troubles, trying to find his place in the world, or understanding what it means to grow up without a father, and no one to recognize that this boy is struggling. His mom can't really do much, and surely there'd be another authority figure in his life, but it seems that that's not the case for him. Paducah has been let down by a whole lot of people. But more so than that, I think Shepard is also highlighting how this is a societal failure on the grand national level. Specifically, he says at one point that like there are a bunch of team motto names for this upcoming big game, and he specifically says "War and 04," which is probably a motto that a high school would develop. But if you recall, in 2004 and 2003, there was the start of the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. The adults were so focused, especially in the Bush administration, they were so focused on these wars and spreading American imperialism overseas that they weren't really focusing on the young adults in the room, weren't really guiding them in the best way that they could. And in that way, I think Shepard is highlighting how this isn't just a problem for this community or for Texas, which has a very rabid love of football. It seems to be a problem for the entire country. How young people seem to be struggling, and no one is actually doing their part to address the problems that they're facing. Which I really like. It's looking at a systemic issue as well as a local community issue here, which Shepard does great things at. And the last thing I'll note is the cultural depiction of football in Texas. Texas is a very rabid state for football, much more so than other places in the United States. It's probably big elsewhere, but especially in Texas, where entire communities kind of tune in for football games, and if you don't, you're viewed as some kind of weird outsider in that regard. So I like how Shepard captures that sort of atmosphere in this story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Trample the Dead, Hurdle the Weak by Jem Shepherd. A pretty good story, one that I definitely recommend. I especially love the title. Every single title in this in this collection is pretty strange, but also really grabs your attention. And much like this story, every other story in the collection is about young adults, is about people who are having a bit of a crisis and might need help and might be let down by the authority figures in their life. And I feel like it's really important to talk about those sorts of things. So I definitely recommend this collection if you can find it, as well as this particular short story, if maybe you can find that outside of this collection. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on my review here, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so other people can find out about this author or this collection or this short story if they don't already know. Also, join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, TV, whatever form of media you want to talk about. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and rabid football travels. Farewell.